Hello, LinkedIn and now YouTube. Welcome to Prospective Force Live. We're excited to be with you today for another edition, and we're continuing to look at stress. And in particular, today we're going to be looking at it in regards to servant leadership. And so, Anton, you want to get us kicked off, and we'll start rolling.
Yeah, so we've talked about stress, I don't know, God, 20 weeks now in a row, I think, specifically stress. We've beat this topic just about to death, and we got 4 more weeks that we're going to keep going around it. But the reason for it, guys, is that I was talking about this in a group on Clubhouse yesterday, and it's really important to connect the symptoms to root causes of those symptoms. And the reason for that, I was thinking about like an analogy this morning. How can we portray that as people? So I was thinking about cars as an example, right? We all have things that happen to our cars that we put off taking care of, whether it be alignment, getting our oil changed, pushing it a little bit later and later, whatever those things are. And if I told you that whatever is the action that you didn't do, it only impacts your gas mileage. So you're like, I'm connecting the problem to only a symptom of gas mileage problem or issue, right? Are you very likely to go, oh my God, I have to really address this right away? No, not really. I mean, that's not the thing that's going to go, oh my God, let me go after it right away. But if I told you that thing connects to 10 different car problems, and each one of those car problems can be detrimental to the health of your car and longevity of your car to where it could break down tomorrow if you didn't do this, are you going to be much more likely to go and do something about those problems? Well, the same thing about organizational ecosystem stress. You as leaders often don't see, it's just, you're not alone. It's our society doesn't see all the different ways that the ripples of stress are created within that organizational ecosystem pond, right? So that's why we're talking about this in such big strokes and such broad conversations, because we're really trying to show you all the different impacts, negative and positive, that stress can have on your people and yourself. So today we're talking about servant leadership. For the next 4 weeks, we'll talk about in some shape, some form, our third pillar of servant leadership. We don't do this enough, guys. I thought about this. Who are we, right? These people are popping in and they're seeing us and we're expecting them to know us all the time, but we're Prospective Force. So our focus is really stress management in organizations right now, whether it be team members, leaders, teams all together. We're trying to correct the imbalance of stress in organizational system. Notice I didn't say get rid of stress. We're trying to correct an imbalance. We're not able to get rid of stress, but we can help your team to thrive. I'm Anton. I'm the CEO, but these guys are actually telling me what to do all the time. But my background's been in health for a long time. I've been a leader in multi-unit environments, large teams, things like that. Military background, and now I call myself really just like a human performance coach. Not from a standpoint of a singular thing, but really just everything that encompasses our performance. Kev, Kimberly, you guys want to introduce yourself real quick?
Go ahead, Kimberly.
Yes, I'm Kimberly Hambrick, and I'm really blessed to kind of hang out with you all and be the leadership consultant or coach, if you will. I have close to 30 years in corporate before I stepped away to create my own business. And I focus on leadership development, growth coach, and training. And this is something that I experienced my whole work career that nobody talked about. And once I saw the two of you and Dee talking about this, I knew I wanted to be a part of it.
Good deal. I guess as the senior member of the team, my area that focus is leadership, but for our organization, I work with our operations. And the bigger picture is having been experienced in life longer than so many, I really can take a look at a holistic approach, including life as well, because I've been intentional in living, and not just living, but trying to be in life in a way that is beyond just existing. And one of the other areas that I focus on and that I like to bring to our team is the consideration of being wise in our choices and helping others do the same. So the big thing for me is that on a given day that any of us can work with a team, an individual, an organization, and we've done this and we have grown together to the extent that we're able to really reach and touch, and then we will tag team the needs that you have. So it's hard to be an individual when we're really such a solid team.
I'll give a shout out to my brother Aaron Peterson. Hey man, I haven't seen you. It's been, God, I don't know, 2 years now, I think, since I've seen you. Shoot me a DM, man. Let's connect and catch up. I want to know what this unicorn universe you're talking about. I wrote a comment. Totally is why I built the unicorn universe, which is what I want to know. But you're spot on, truly. I like the term "get ahead of the tiger before it eats you," and that is such a great thing you just said, Aaron, because that's what we're trying to do. You know, when I brought these guys together, 2 years, more than 2 years with some of them, I said that we're very ahead of the problem. We are trying to solve a problem that most of consumer doesn't understand exists. They see the symptoms, but they don't understand where it's really coming from. And that tiger is eating them pretty good right now. So we're trying to now get a little faster, do a little better with marketing, do more, any sort of stage appearances to spread the message, because it's time to wake up. I'm going to go there a little bit, and you guys stop me if I'm going to offend anybody, but I wrote a post and said, we don't have a gun control problem. We have a mental health crisis that is led by the stress that we don't understand in our society. And I'm not going to get into gun control. I'm not going to necessarily talk about that, but I just want you guys to understand the difference between what's happening today in our society and what wasn't happening in the 50s is not the things that we have or the things that we don't have. It's this thing. It's the brain. It's the body. It's the spirit. Those are the things that are being destroyed by so many different things we've discussed over the last, 20 weeks. And go back, watch the episodes if you really want to dive deep, because literally, if you watch our episodes, you can save your team from stress without ever working with us. You just have to invest a lot of time into covering a lot of episodes versus us coming in and custom tailoring it to you. But yeah, gotta get to that tiger before it eats us. Great point.
Anton, let me give a shout out to Ricky Hartree. Ricky is one of the regulars on my live show, and he's joined us today. So glad to have you, Ricky. And I like the analogy used earlier of a car. Okay, and having grown up around cars, and I can fix them, I can rebuild them. Maybe a further aspect of that analogy is if you take a car and you never change the oil and you just keep driving it and you don't add oil, what's going to happen is you'll go along and it'll work and it'll work and it'll work. And then at a moment, it depends on where you're driving at the moment. If you're driving slowly down the road, the car's going to quit and there will be some degree of damage to the engine. But if you are driving that same car and you're going 70 miles an hour down the interstate and the engine finally gives up, the engine's going to explode, literally. Pieces fall off. And so what we're watching is people running low on oil, and initially you got probably in a car you can go about 40% before you even before you even start getting a warning light, and then you start getting a warning light or something, and it'll go on for a while. So what we want to do is we're trying to flash the warning lights for you guys that this is really harming people on all levels, and that's our passion. That's what we want to help you do, is to find out how to refresh the oil, add to it, or change it, or whatever it takes, just conceptually.
And to that point, Kev, something that you hear me talk about all the time, guys, is you have to have contrast in life. And talking about with this analogy of running on bad oil for a while, you may have gotten used to, and you don't think your car is performing that badly because you've forgotten what it performed like when it was good. If you know the feeling that you just got all your tune-up done in the car, you start driving that car and you're like, oh my goodness, it's like a car. I don't remember this car being this good. But think about that. are you likely to want to change? Are you likely to adapt things in your organization or in your car if you forgot how good it used to be and how bad it is right now? Because change occurs so slowly, especially with the human body and stress, that contrast is not present. So you forget what to fight for. And that's a tough thing. So that's why we talk about these symptoms so much. But Aaron, hey, brother, I see you wrote a comment. Dude lost 80 million company due to stress, communication, and the tiger. Man, I know a little bit about your container situation, man. But if you're willing, dude, I'd love to get you on the show and talk about this. If this is something you're willing to share with the audience, DM me, brother, and let's set up a time to get you on so you can share your journey, as well as what you're doing now to overcome it, and just give leaders practical advice and lessons, not necessarily from an expert standpoint, but from somebody that went through it. If you're open to that, man, would love to have you on the show to give value. But yeah, let's get into the agenda first. We'll talk about what's coming up today. So HR news of the week, as always, we try to be edutational a little bit. Like, none of us are your super like entertaining folks. Like, we crack jokes and stuff, but Kimberly keeps the fun going. When she's not here, it's super dry. But we're not necessarily, we're a little bit more intellectuals than we are entertainers. And yes, they're going to disagree probably, but it's the reality. So we plug in things like HR news of the week to make things a little bit more relevant. We'll talk about understanding impact of stress on organizational ecosystem, like we always do. Then we'll dive into topics of being a caring leader, being a support system, serving others, empowering your team, and knowing your team as vital components to stress management, and really just any organizational effectiveness for that matter for your company. So HR news article of the week. Found this article, managers are burnt out after difficult year, LinkedIn report says. Well, no surprise, right? I don't think anybody's here is like, oh goodness, this is new information. But the data is going to be what's interesting to me. So the first one is manager burnout rose 78% between Q1 and Q4 of 2020, guys. 78%. Now, think about that statistic. And now remember, people don't leave jobs, they leave bad managers. And you can be a great intentionality manager, meaning that you have all the intention in the world to be good. But if this thing is cracking under stress, if your mind is not performing under stress, socially, you're not going to be the same person. Behaviorally, you're not going to be the same person. Your mental acuteness is not going to be the same person. So guess what? All of those people are feeling the impact of those 78% managers. So the impact on the company is not stopping there. It's magnified when it's trickled down into the team members. What are you guys' thoughts on that first point?
Not surprising, as you said. And one of the things that we've talked about time and time again is a crisis doesn't define a good leader and make them a good leader. So if you had limitations and struggles before you were thrown into this very difficult time, they're going to be heightened. And I think what a lot of us saw were managers, if you will, who were not comfortable leading in a virtual environment, were not comfortable actually knowing anything about their team except the fact that Anton works in this position. And what last year, put a big spotlight on is we have to be there for our team. We have to be there for each other, and we have to actually care. And I think that's part of why that is not a surprise to me.
Yeah, not at all surprised, because even prior to the pandemic, I had companies coming to me saying, hey, we're worried about especially our field leadership, middle management type people, because they are really under a greater stress load, and they're willing to work hard. They'll even put in overtime, but we're afraid we're going to lose them. The other part of this article, to me, is that employees who find their manager inspirational are 2 times more likely to feel optimistic. The solutions that we're talking about have to be holistic. And quite often it is not about money. It's not about the traditional management thought items. It's about a whole different concept where, what we are really encourage and promote is kind of a favorite saying is to manage things. We got to do that. We got to keep up with schedules and KPIs and all that. But the other part is to also lead people. And when you don't do one or the other suffers. And so part of avoiding this burnout is a holistic thought. And what you'll find when hopefully some of you will go to our website and take the assessment that we have there is we're not going to just ask you about KPIs and those kinds of things, because that is can be factors, but there are bigger factors and they are more difficult to identify because, again, we don't recognize them until the damage is done. And what we want to do is help you guys be able to get the oil check. For those of you, go back to our analogy, teach you how to go or help you go and check the oil in your engine to let's see where it's at. For those of you that understand this concept, you stick the oil dipstick down in there and you pull it out and there's nothing on it, you're in trouble. And so we like to try to help you get there before the dipstick is dry, so to speak.
Hey, shout out to my buddy Shannon from Colorado, good friend of mine, one of the smartest people I know. I learned so much from this guy. If you guys are not connected to Shannon Squires, connect to that guy. He's an awesome dude. But yeah, so just I'm a stats guy. I'm a numbers guy. These guys are much more people centric than probably I am. I learn from them all the time. But there's a stat that I talked about where only 17% of companies are doing something about stress management. So 78% of managers are burnt out, but only 17% of companies are doing something about it. I would be hard pressed that somebody can prove to me that there's something more important for organization to do today, right now in this moment, than close that gap. I don't think there is anything that can improve your KPIs more than closing that gap. I'm not saying we're going to be perfect, but just 60% difference between the problem occurring and who's actually doing something about it. That's not acceptable, guys. So according to one such study by Better Up, published in August, the direct reports of resilient managers reported 52% less burnout and were 78% less likely to leave an organization compared to their peers. So what happens on the flip side when we are the way that we are, right? Those people are leaving. They're gone. They're saying goodbye to you. But guess what that's doing? Now it's putting additional load, additional stress on people that are already burnt out with a burnt out manager. And what does a burnt out manager usually have to do when these things happen? They have to take themselves away from leadership. They have to take themselves away from strategy, and they have to dive deep into execution. And we know when that happens, when the leader has to fill in the gaps of daily tasks because they're short-staffed, other things start to fall to the side. When you look at the urgent, not urgent quadrants and important and not important, that's when you start trying to solve fires all the time because you can't get to things soon enough when they're not, when they're important, but they're not urgent. So that's a big, big problem.
Yeah, the solving, putting out fires, I hear time and time again from people in leadership positions. That's how they spend their day in, day out, putting out fires. And I keep telling them day in, day out. That's not what they should be doing. But it's this concept, if you will, in corporate that we forget that humans come to work. Humans bring their personal baggage with them. They have the stress of the job there. And we're not creating an outlet for them to even feel like they can be heard. They're not looking for solutions. They just want to be heard. They want somebody to understand for a second. And 12% you said that are offering stress? 17% offering stress management. I would want to take a look at exactly what they were offering.
Yeah, exactly? Is that 17% just offering a Band-Aid solution that is not even effective? Because that's such a good point, Kimberly. Just because a solution is offered doesn't mean it's the right solution, and more importantly, it doesn't mean that it's a tailored solution. And this is something that I drive home really hard. I've been in wellness for a long time, and I talk about this all the time. People walking into the gym, swiping their card. Shannon, if you're still watching, I know you've seen this, and they're checking in and walking around the table and walking out. Why? They have to swipe their card 8 times in a month to keep their membership. Is the business actually getting a benefit? Are these people actually getting a benefit for their stress management? No. It's not, because they don't have the buy-in. That solution wasn't tailored to them. But hey, we want free stuff. Somebody's giving me a free membership. I'm going to say, sure, I'll go, telling myself I'll be at that gym, and it doesn't happen because it wasn't tailored to me. The buy-in is missing. So, Kev, anything on those?
Yeah, well, just I appreciate what Kimberly focused in, because I had the same thought. That 17%, folks. Yeah, I appreciate some people like playing ping pong at lunch, but it is not going to likely help everybody. Or the yoga classes. I know that for me, aside from most people don't want to see me doing yoga, it is not going to be my ticket either. So, one of the things that we do, and is so critical, is we want to identify ways to effectively address the stress and make it in a way that will work for your team. And by the way, we're not forgetting the concept that a company has to make money. And so what's really, I tell leaders that I train all the time, I said, some of the things you need to do to build your team cost zero money. They don't require bunches of time, but it's things that we don't consider and understand about ourselves and our team members. And that's part of what we want to help you do, is get to know your team and what those needs are to start with. Because again, you can set up a whole room full of games and stuff, and yeah, you might hit 20% of your folks, but what about the others? And that ends up being money wasted, and then you spend money down the road restructuring that space for something else. So we really like to come in and help identify the need.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Kevin, because you were talking about the impact on the bottom line. If you have an employee who is stressed, 9 out of 10 times it's going to take them longer to do a task. They're going to have more mistakes. They're going to be struggling. They're not going to be a part of wanting to move it forward. And we don't see that. So most of the time, we don't see that as an impact of stress. We see that as an impact that they're not skilled to do the position. And so when you see somebody who's been one of your top performers and there's a drop, there's a reason behind it. We always talk about the root cause. There are reasons behind it. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't. A lot of people spend a lot of time putting Band-Aids on symptoms, and it ultimately, those approaches cost a lot of money and get nothing for it.
I don't think it's a intentional thing. Like I said, it's a lack of understanding of the problem. It's lack of understanding of all the possible inputs, right? And
right.
That's what I look at as, like, when we work with organizations, we come in and we say, here's all the inputs that we have, but here's all the inputs that are relevant to you and your environment. Mm-hmm. But now let's figure out which of these are the best ones to address the root causes. Because if I come in and give you 20 inputs to work with, your team can't change. Your team can't adapt that. You can't adapt with that as a leader. We have to identify 1 to 2 that are the most relevant, the most bang for your buck, whether it be time buck or, financial buck, and get you the best results from that. Just shout outs to people. Looks like we got Sonia. Sonia, I apologize for the echo. I hopefully it went away. I turned it down a little bit. Shout out to Livia from Jamaica. Thanks so much for joining, guys. And Aaron, yes, let's set up that meeting and talk. Let's jump
to have everyone join in, and hope that everyone participating will let us know where from. And also feel free. We would love to have your comments, questions. Even though we have an agenda, our top agenda is engaging with you guys. So be sure to share questions, comments with us, and we will address them as we go along.
Hit the next slide, brother. So, guys, talk about this all the time. And this is this piece of awareness. I think we literally have covered this slide for, 20 weeks now. And it's understanding how stress is trapped inside your organization. Think about your company, your team, as this ecosystem. and it's fragile. It's very fragile. When things go off, it affects everything in that system. And stress can enter the ecosystem, but unless you do something about it, it gets trapped in there. And that's how your teams work. That's how all these things work out. So you need specific ways to offload that stress intentionally. It's just not going to disappear. Our bodies used to be able to just manage the stress. Back in the 50s, you had a traditional work week. You didn't have technology overloads, all these problems. You could just naturally breathe the next night, sleep, whatever, and you were done. Can't do that anymore. Our stress is 100 times the level of our grandparents. And when you start to really understand why that is, you go, we can't allow this to continue to happen, because stress just recirculates. And the tree on the left is your team that's barely surviving, right? The tree's hibernating. It's in the winter stage. It's not dead, but it's just not doing a whole lot. The tree on the right is the tree that's thriving, right? And your team has a lot to do with that. The way that they feel, the way that the stress is impacting them, especially when you start to use things like polyvagal nerve theory. I know I'm going a little nerd on you, but there's a nerve in the back of your head, the vagus nerve, and it's responsible for switching you off from your go system, which is your sympathetic nervous system, and your kind of relaxed system, parasympathetic nervous system. Now, when we're under chronic stress, that ability to flip-flop gets lost. And each side of that nerve are responsible for different behaviors. So when we get to a point where we're just overly stressed and that nerve can't switch off, we get into freeze mode, which comes with things like hopelessness, comes with lack of drive, comes with, just everything is doom and gloom. You don't want to act. You can't take risks. You can't put yourself out there. You can't take initiative. And I don't know about you, but that's not the team member that I want on my team. I want little mini entrepreneurs running around thinking for themselves, taking initiative for themselves, feeling empowered and confident to execute. But we don't think how their own brain and the state of stress that brain is in impacts their ability to do that. So this ecosystem is important. And when the more you understand about this and how everything is interconnected and how stress gets trapped, the better off you'll be.
Anton, something popped into my head that might help add. Yeah, I know it's dangerous, but we'll try it. Is that the tree represents culture. Okay. And the left side you see is unhealthy. It is not what it needs to be for your organization, for your team. What you want is a healthy, thriving culture that will really cause your team to not only survive and thrive well for themselves, the individual buckets, but also for the team itself as well. When you're working with that, and Anton talked about the entrepreneurial approach of our team members. Some people get frightened at that because they think, oh, well, they'll leave me and do their own thing. Well, done well, what you're after is that those people are entrepreneurial, but they are taking ownership for their part of helping the organizational structure and helping the organization to thrive. And that is much more effective. And from a leadership standpoint, that's the sweet spot for your team. Is you want them to be entrepreneurial. You don't want to have to be hands-on constantly. You want them to, I do a mind mapping when I do leadership classes, and we go through and talk about the challenges that are going on. And one of the big ones, there's initiative. Well, if you support people that are entrepreneurial mindset, one of the values is they're going to take initiative. And they're going to move things forward without you having to, as the old saying go, herd cats.
Anton, you're muted.
No, I was going, Anton.
You as a leader can do everything right. The environment can do everything right. The team could be doing everything right. But that team member is dealing with stress at home. And it is toppling them over. That bucket you see is spilling over. And now they bring that state to the team. And it's like a cancer because that water has to go somewhere. Think about the overflow of water as stress. It goes into other people's buckets. It goes into the big team bucket. And when that team bucket overflows, it goes back in the sky and we drop it back down, and then it rains back into those individual buckets. You can't isolate straight stress to a single person. So, and don't think it's something that you're doing or not doing. It could be anywhere. It could be coming from anywhere, but everything you do ultimately gets filtered through a single thing. You can take 1,000 actions, but they all get filtered through one brain. And if that one thing is broken, none of this outside stuff matters because it's seen through a wrong lens. Let's get into the slide. Next slide. So the first one, guys, right? And before we even talk about this, guys, let me ask you, what is the opposite of a servant leader, right? We're talking about servant leadership today as being the antidote of stress. And I was like, I wonder what these guys would say is the opposite, because if servant leadership is the antidote of stress, that means whatever is the opposite is the creator of stress. So in your guys' opinion, what's opposite of servant leadership?
What do you think, Kevin?
In a phrase, the boss.
See, I was thinking a positional leader, which is the boss.
And I know I get a little bit over the top on this topic, but in my opinion, the problem is that people may have a title as a leader or a position as a leader, but if they're behaving in incorrect or not the best ways, I go so far as say they've stopped leading. They are strictly managing, and that's not a good place. They become the boss. That whole, we can conjure up all the memes that are out there about the boss. One of my favorites is the boss that's using one of the employees as a golf club. I don't know if y'all remember seeing that one, but to me, that's the antithesis. And the big characterization of that quite often is, whether it's intended or not, it is this self-centered approach.
Yeah, it's a person that's managing to the bottom line, not managing the people that are supposed to be helping them to get there. You hear leaders who will say, bosses, I should say, who will say, well, I don't know what he or she does. I told them what to do. And then you have, so you have an email or a meeting that says, here's our plan. This is due by X date. And you don't hear from them until X date passes and things weren't done. And then it's put down on the employee that missed the deadline. They didn't, if they didn't have the right resources or whatever, it was their responsibility to figure it out. I mean, it's a, for lack of a better way, it's a cold fish that sits in an office that doesn't interact.
That's a good point. And, Aaron made a great comment here. So I agreed. You can't say leave the stress at home. Not fair for people, not fair to people in your organization. We have feelings. We are not robots. And that fits perfectly with the topic and as well as the caring leader aspect, right? I see this not as much lately, but it's still, I think, a concept that people struggle with leaders is trying to separate an employee from a human at home. And where do you draw that line? Like, where is this part of me here and this part of me here? Like, I'm one person. There's no such thing, which is why we always talk about there's no such thing as work-life balance. Like, they're never going to be balanced. It's a myth that we created from an emotional standpoint. It's coexistence, congruence, right? That's what it's all about. How do we get a person to manage the complexities of both, stay who they are and nurture who they are and be at their best still, right? So you're spot on, asking people to leave their crap at home, which a lot of people do, and they talk about, well, don't bring your drama here or whatever. It's still inside these people's bodies. They may be not verbalizing it, but it's still eating at them. It's still impacting their performance. And through indirect actions, it's impacting everybody else. So as a caring leader, that's step number one. Care about them beyond the four walls of your organization. Care about them in every aspect of who they are. Care about them from their health standpoint. Care about them from their life standpoint. Care about them from development standpoint, not just what it serves your organization. Development should be for their future that you get to be part of, not trying to make them be part of your future.
Well, I have to share a personal experience on this one because it was just so eye-opening for me in my development as a leader. And this goes back to my teaching days. And I had been teaching a group of high school students. And when I began, the perspective that was shared with me of my students' view of me was summed up in a phrase, and that was, "You better watch your back, Mr. Ward." Okay, and so I had developed a target on my back. The irony of it is, going into this process, my intentions were the best in the world. I treated these young people just like they were my own children, and with the same care and love and so on. But there was, I was still getting that response. And then I wish I could say I had been smart enough to figure this out on my own, but I was pushed into through an accreditation process. I had to do a survey of my students, or a feedback form, whatever you like to call it. And being the resourceful guy I was, I Googled one to find it. And this particular one had an item on it that I might not have even thought to ask. And it was, does your instructor care about you? And, when I got done with the surveys, a lot of the traditional spread of responses, but that particular one just blew me out of the water, because now this was across 4 different groups. Okay, so this was really statistically very telling. And it came back that 80% of these students didn't think I cared about them. And you could have knocked me down, as the saying goes, with a feather when I read that. So what I did then is, it was a real awakening for me, and I had to adjust. Now, just so people, I know some of my peers, when we start talking about being a caring leader, they go to circling up and group hugs and things like that. And that's not what we're talking about. What, in this particular case for me, I had to do a better job of communicating to these young people why I was doing what I was doing. And when I simply let them understand the context of why I was such a firm teacher, and why I expected a lot of them and even demanded a lot of them, when they started understanding, that was because I cared deeply, and that's what it took to help them grow and get ready for what they were facing. Within the next year or so, the mantra that I would hear from the students changed from "you better watch your back" to "we've got your back, Mr. Ward." And and what happened is, it made a dramatic change in the demeanor of my students and the way the class ran. It affected loyalties. I mean, it was truly remarkable how powerful the concept of caring as a leader, and not just intending to care. The people you're leading need to understand how you care.
Mm-hmm.
And
communication matters. It's so important. I so relate with what you're saying, Kev. It's, maybe I've told the story before, but there was a period of time where I would ask my team members, and I'd say, "How are you doing?" And the very first answer that came out from them were their financials and their business performance. And I'd be like, "No, stop. Like, I just want to know how you're doing." And I thought it was on them. I was like, "What? Why they should realize I care about more than their performance." But it was the verbiage that I was talking about. It was the communication that I was sending out that made it seem like all I cared was about that. It wasn't the fact, but the words that I chose to use and the conversations I chose to have made them feel that way. We didn't have rifts, we didn't have bad culture, anything like that, but we weren't nearly close to our potential because of that. So, you have to ask yourself, leader regularly checks in on the needs of each team member, right? Do you actually do that? Do you constantly check on their needs outside of their KPIs, outside of the things that are important between the 4 walls of your organization, knowing that as a human being, if their needs are not being met outside of those 4 walls, they're going to be having problems inside those 4 walls.
Yeah, and on this one, even a leader who does this, you're not going to be able to meet each and every one of these needs. And that's not what it's about. It's truly creating a space for the team member to be heard. They're not looking for a solution. Sometimes they just want to be heard. And you might be able to start doing this, but this is where a lot of leaders get messed up because they want to be liked, and they think if I check in, I'm going to meet each and every one of their needs. They're going to like me. They like me. That's not what this is about. This is about practicing what it means to be a good human inside an organizational setting.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't, the check-ins aren't, there needs to be organized and performance evaluations, things like that, certainly. But what we're talking about is just an awareness. You hear that their spouse is going to be in the hospital or something, or the spouse is pregnant and the baby's due. Just how's the baby coming on? Whatever. We're not. This is not complicated. It doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah, and it's such a good point that you brought up. So if you know that you have a team member who is going through a difficult time that might need a little bit more time off, then you can share that person's work with others, and then they see that when Kevin, you were having an issue, we stepped in to help you. They're going to remember that, and if they have an issue, and that's what this is really about. It's because we can't do anything about those issues you mentioned, but what we can do is listen and say, I hear you and I'm here for you.
Well, and when the leader builds this culture that is about caring, what happens is that the team carries the culture too. It doesn't mean the leader has to always be carrying the water on this. Within this culture, then the team members will reach out to each other, and then they will even, as they hear of things, if it's something that the leader needs to be aware of, they're going to drop them a note, stop by and say, hey, just so you'll know. And it functions in a truly human fashion. And I may get in trouble for this one. I'm not real wild about people talking about the people at work being family. I appreciate the intent, but my family is my family. But I have to say, in this culture, you do function more like family than just a coworker situation. And there's a fine line, and I know you have to be careful, but we definitely don't err on the side of being like family. We err on the side of, this is work, let's only be work, and so on.
Love it. Let's get into the next one. Oh, Kev, we skipped over this. Mine kind of came back to it. Have you ever done yoga?
Me?
Yeah.
I have thought about it, but I don't think my body would do that.
Yeah, I have my life going now. Okay, we're good.
It probably may be my limited understanding of yoga, but
my body does it. Your body can do it.
Oh, well, and who knows? Maybe I'm even at my current level of maturity, I need to revisit it. Who knows? I'm open to learning.
It's my new life goal now. Okay. I just wanted to check in. Meaning that to get you to do
there will not be a yoga demonstration on one of these sessions.
I used to do yoga meetings all the time. Like I'd get the team together, I'd teach a class. Anybody that that work for me knows I'm a big fan of that. But tailored to the individual, right? And usually it's super easy, like gentle stuff. We're not trying to fold ourselves in a pretzel, tap our head, and rub our belly.
Okay, well that's good because I don't.
I know you won't fold in the pretzel, brother. I wouldn't expect
get me in a pretzel. Then the next stop probably is going to be at the doctor's office.
Yep, I gotcha. So the next one, guys, is the next principle that we understand of servant leadership is be a support system, right? It's one thing to care, but then you have to do something about that care. And this is where I see a lot of just lip service from leaders. And, where people are really good at layering that really thick emotional conversation. And, they really in one-on-ones show this stuff. But when actions happen or mistakes happen because of stress or other things, those leaders turn on those employees. Well, wait a minute. Where did all those words go? Now that I need you to act on those words, it's completely changed, right? So you actually have to act on them and not be perfect. You know, I think these guys will tell you that leaders can make mistakes. You think that supporting one person is good and it turns out to backfire, but you have to try. You have to actually act on your words of care.
Yeah.
Welcome to Karen Chan, by the way. Karen's been a regular with us. Glad to have you, Karen. Good to see you and hear from you. So welcome.
Yeah, and I really appreciate what you were saying about this one, Anton. And sometimes it can be as simple. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. Creating an opportunity for people to be heard, but when they're together as a team, they see and hear that you care for what people are saying. They know that if they have a situation or an issue, that you'll be there for them. You're not going to be able to address the issue completely, but you're there for them. That is different than a weekly or every 2-week email that comes out checking in on your team and saying, hey, I'm here for you. And then when somebody bubbles up with an issue and with a person, a leader that I'm no longer associated with, when a team member would bubble up an issue, that leader would then go out to the leadership team and complain about the person. So not trying to help in any way, shape, or form. And the reason that I'm no longer associated, because I was one of the people on the leadership team that said, this is wrong. We need to be fixing this. I was booted off the island pretty quickly.
Voted off.
Yeah.
To give a symptom here that we see a lot of in regards to this, we think our support system is we have a town hall meeting weekly, and everybody's supposed to tell you what they're concerned about. And if the next week you just take the prior week's agenda and change the date and do it again, and nothing's changing, you have a broken support system. And I hear people complain all the time of, well, they ask us what would help us, and we tell them, and then they do nothing about it. Or sometimes even more egregious is they do whatever they wanted to do anyway. And one of the favorites is, and again, I'm gonna probably upset somebody, but one of the favorites is, okay, well, this is happening, so let's get this new software. Probably wrong answer. Okay, it may be well intended, and it may even look good in a little news article. Well, then, so and so team, we bought this new software that's going to help everybody be better, and probably not, and it may even offend a number of your team members.
Yeah, it's such a simple way to do this, and you can go to the next slide. Well, I'm just wrapping this one up, but a simple way to do this is set the intention up front. Let them know, hey, I'm perfectly imperfect. I'm going to try my best. We're going to talk about things that we're not going to be able to address, but I want to listen. I want to hear. And if you at least let them know that you're open to it and you're not going to just come back around. I'm with you, Kevin. My skin crawls when somebody acts like they're caring and they want to have input, and then they're doing what they wanted to do in the first place.
Your team members, I think, want effort and then growth from mistakes, right? So I think that if you're just putting effort and you keep doing the wrong things, but you're not correcting them, I think that could be problematic over time. But they just want to see that you made a mistake, you pivoted, you adjusted, you learned from it, and now that mistake's going to happen less in the future, or it's not going to happen at all. And people don't expect perfection. I think that's the reality. Human beings understand you're also a human being as a leader. But make this statement, hit the next slide, Kev. And if this is not true, then you're not doing a good job here. My team has leadership support both at home and at work. And if you can't answer that full-heartedly, then you're missing out. There's gaps. There's performance gaps on your team because you're not doing this as a leader.
Well, and I'll share a comment that Ricky has put up there, and I'm going to have to explain it because I understand his point. He is sharing a scripture verse, and the key thing is that the people that were oppressed, which a lot of our people feel oppressed by their leadership, they cried out and they were heard. And I will tell you, as a leader, if you do not support your folks, they will cry out. And what will happen is you'll get a mutiny on your hands. And so either they will undo you or the leadership above them will undo them. So there's so much value in this and makes such a huge difference. So thanks for that, Ricky.
Let's get to the next one. We got to kind of move a little quick to cover the last three. Serving others, right? Is servant leadership at the core of that is serving others. But I always say it for what intent, right? I see this happen to where leaders tend to, not all, and I wouldn't even call them leaders, so managers tend to do that very strategically, to where, you know, everybody sees that they did this good deed and it's all visible and it's all, once again, lip service. Even if it is actions, what is the intention behind serving others? Is it to improve your view? Is it to improve your performance, make yourself promoted faster? Or is it truly to help them on their next step in their own development, on the next step in their own journey? You know, and you know, Kimberly will tell you probably better than anybody, but I love John C. Maxwell's principles. You know, I love how it's all about replication. It's all about getting other people's success. That's what the pinnacle of leadership is. It's not getting to stand on top of something and be glorified while your team succeeds. It's being in the clouds. It's being in the shadows while they're shining and they're moving forward. And you're just going, I got to be part of their journey, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, that's why I love working with you, because you could read my mind. Because one of my favorite John Maxwell quotes is, success is when we add value to ourselves. So as a leader, as you go up through the ranks, you've added value to yourself. Significance is when you add value to others. And you should be in a leadership role, caring about your team, praising your team for the sole intention to move them forward on their growth journey, which might be moving out of your team, out of your organization. That's what you're supposed to be about. You're not supposed to be about keeping them under your thumb and making sure that you look good.
3 core values to being a servant leader. And if you don't have these, you got a challenge. One of them is responsibility. And that responsibility for a servant leader is to quickly take blame and quickly give credit. The second is acceptance. And that means, accepting the situation and taking ownership of it. And the last, and this is such the critical piece, is humility. If you're not operating from that, you're not going to be a servant leader, just to be blunt. And so if you don't understand those concepts, then that's a good starting place, is to understand and build on those 3 characteristics. Because if you've got those working, it really changes upstream in our life.
So make the statement to yourself: team members regularly praise me for helping them succeed. And then take a look. If it is happening, great. But then, is it happening for success only work related? Or is this also getting praise for, hey, you helped me to get through a tough relationship moment? Or, hey, you helped me figure out a financial situation? Or, hey, you helped me get my first house? Whatever it may be, make sure that praise is not only coming from about work.
When you have this kind of culture, people look forward to being at work because it's part of what they do and who they are.
So empowering your team, right? That should be one of the biggest things that servant leaders have to get out of the way. If you don't get out of the way, even if you intend well, you're just limiting your own capacity. You're limiting their capacity to grow, but you're also limiting your capacity to influence, because you're, once again, too much in the execution versus the empowerment, inspiration, and leadership stages of this relationship.
I love this one. And I have so many examples of where it goes south, where a person who was overseeing a team did not believe in that team to do the work they were supposed to do, and this person would work till 3, 4 in the morning doing the work of everybody else on the team. That's micromanaging. That's making people feel like they don't matter. That's not empowerment.
And we don't have time today to dig into this, but a lot of people in leadership positions don't have a concept of how to empower the members of their team. And there's a process, and it is around a concept called group dynamic. And it is a key part of being able to empower your team and as a leader, apply the appropriate leadership styles. And regardless of what your natural leadership style is, you want to ultimately become that servant leader, which is the term that I like to use is facilitate. You want to be more about facilitating your team than managing or driving them. And when you get there, you have begun to empower your team. So not enough time to dig in, but we can certainly.
Yeah, these are some deep topics. We're covering really broadly over the last few months. We'll dig in deeper into a lot of these in the future, but our team takes the initiative at the appropriate level. If that's not happening, it's not on them. It is not on them. Initiative is 100 plus 1% on the leader. It really is all on you. It's the way you receive. It's the way you respond when they take initiative. It's the way you respond when they succeed. It's the way you respond when they make mistakes, right? It's the way that you get out of the way. It's all because of you. And if that's the answer is not true, change yourself. The last point is know your employees, right? And this boils down to not just know your employees' strengths and weaknesses. That's already going to be a step up for most people. But I'm talking about know your employee needs. Understand what they need, how they need it, and when they need it, because it's going to be very different from one person to the other. When it comes down to stress, you know that certain people are going to be buckling under certain situations while others may thrive in it. But when you flip-flop and you put the thriving person into that situation, they may struggle. So knowing how to manage those things and putting people in positions where they're best supported, they're best optimized, whatever the words we want to say, that's once again on you as a leader. But do you know them on that level?
If all you can tell about somebody is their performance KPIs, you're in trouble.
Oh, and it's and it's asking, what can I do to help you be successful? I mean, it really is. I have a hashtag simple yet profound because I'm not really intellectually deep, people. I mean, it's what do you need to watch it there? But it's really that simple to ask them, what do you need from me to be successful here? And they're not going to ask you for more money. They're not going to ask you for the corner office if you're back in the office. That's not what they're asking for. They really want to know that you want to hear that maybe they need to change their work hours, especially during the last year when they were home and kids were out of school. So, I said to people, you know what you have to do. I don't care when you get it done. Make your own schedule. And that seems, unheard of for a lot of people to think that way.
And making sure you have that you have people in the roles that they're best suited for. Because if you have them in the role that they're best suited for, and that's going to include who they are as a person, not just an employee. And if you help them be successful, guess what? It's going to make the team successful, which is going to make the leader successful. It's sometimes I get frustrated because maybe I'm have more insight than I give myself credit for, but this is not rocket science. And by the way, don't believe Kimberly. She's a very bright lady.
Who wouldn't hang out with her if she wasn't?
Well,
no,
we
but,
are.
And like your point of asking Kimberly, that just ask them. I know the strengths and weaknesses of my team members, but like I said, it's not just about that. I should put in their needs as well. And one thing that I see from leaders, because I know this because I was one, it's hoarding team members. Like you feel like I just want all these people to stay with me, never leave the nest, so that way, God forbid that happens. That's a terrible mentality, right? You're going to lose them regardless. But do you want to lose them in a positive way while you were the conduit for them to reach their next step? Or do you want to lose them just because they left anyway? Because if it's the first one and you help them, they may come back later in a different position with more skills. They may send people to you. The relationship will grow in different ways, and I promise you it'll benefit you one way or another. So asking somebody, what do you want? And they say, I want to get to this job, and it may not be with this company, and not be offended by that. Not take it personal and say, great, while you're here, what are the things that we can focus on to close the gaps to get you there? And do that and watch how amazing they're going to be. And they may realize that they'll never leave because now they see opportunities here that they didn't see before.
The mind and heart of a servant leader, Anton, you just identified
Absolutely.
the concept right there in that one example.
Yeah, get something right. Okay, so
Get a lot
you hear us talking a lot about this. Go to prospectiveforce.com. Do this with your teams. Go take the quiz on there. There's a quick, short 12-question quiz. It'll tell you a high-level idea if this is a problem. If it is a problem, you'll get a link that you go take a 60-question assessment that'll break down by 12 sections for you and basically give you scores and say, here's your lowest score. Forget the rest. Identify the worst one. Find one principle within that. Find one action you can focus on that. And then for 30 days, go after that one thing. Reassess later and see how that root cause impacted everything above it. And if you get scores really bad or some team members get scores real bad, reach out to us. We'll give you a complimentary consultation because we're on a mission, guys. This is not just about making money. Of course, we want to make money. But Human SOS is a movement we're trying to create. Like we talked about in the beginning of this conversation, we got to fix the problem before it destroys us any further. And we are in the middle of a massive problem.
So reach out if you take the assessment. I really encourage you, share that with anybody you want to. It doesn't cost. And at any point you want to pick our brain, do an exploratory meeting, we do that for free. And then if there's something that we can help you with, then we can take it from there. So thanks, everyone. We'll be back next Tuesday. We will continue on stress as related to servant leadership.
Culture management is going to be servant leadership, of course, but culture management is the component of that and how to manage it with stress.
So we'll invite others to join us. We'd love to have you. Want to hear your questions, comments. Even if you watch the recording, if you'll add questions, comments, we will respond either to them textually or we will bring it up next live. So thanks, everyone. Have an amazing week. We look forward to seeing you back with us next week. Take care.